Hello everyone, Eldon Yoder here with Conversations with Yoders Farm. Lowell and I are going to do a quick podcast episode today, recapping where we are in the season, the strawberry season thus far this year, kind of how things have gone, and kind of the end game, I guess, for our spring season. And then I think we're going to talk a little bit about strawberry varieties. So, Lowell, how has the season gone thus far this year?
I think it's been a good season. We are, you kind of you have several levels. You have poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent.
Yeah.
And I'd say we're in the good part right now, and I guess there's always potential to move it along to very good.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'll hit excellent this season, but yeah, it's overall been a good year.
Yeah, and probably on the poorer end of the scale would be like some years like we've had in the last couple of years where it's rained quite a bit. We've had a lot of issues with disease and stuff like that. But this year has been fairly dry, which has been fairly nice. We've had a couple weekends where it rained. We wouldn't have liked it. We would have liked if it hadn't, but that's kind of the cards we were dealt this year, and it's like you say, been a pretty good year so far.
Yeah, I think when we were recording last time, there was rain drumming on the roof, as I remember.
That's right.
That was really the last big rain we've had. We had a shower or so in between, but not too much. It's actually kind of dusty.
Yeah, it is dusty, sure enough.
But I'm not going to complain because it actually works out. Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable for us and blows dust around where we wish it wouldn't, but it actually is pretty good strawberry growing weather. You can irrigate a whole lot easier than you can
unirrigate.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
pump out your rows.
Yeah, there's been a fair amount of the times that it did rain this year. So
anyway, yeah, it's we wish it wouldn't be quite so hot right now. It's about 117 degrees. At least it feels that way.
I think it's only about 90 couple maybe.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's been a very warm couple of days, and looks like going to be warm for the next at least week or
which
10
can
days.
really push ripening of berries, can't it?
Yeah, and it sort of can start shutting things down too.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we're in the end game. We're in the final couple weeks of the pick your own patch. So that's
This week is Memorial Day weekend, I guess.
Correct.
I think I said that wrong, or it felt wrong, but anyway, Memorial Day is on Monday. We generally have a fair amount of people out here over Memorial Day, and this year it happens to be kind of towards the tail end of not the tail end, but the slowing down, slower part of the season. Is that a good way
we
to say
talked
it?
about these strawberries. It's kind of a build up. There's a peak, and then it tapers towards the end, and we're somewhere on that taper. Towards the end. I was actually surprised the last couple of days. Picking has actually been pretty good for this time of the year.
Yeah.
It's the time of the year for the patient picker. You're not going to just run out there and see berries hanging down off the edges of the rows and grab big plump berries and fill your bucket in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But a good picker, like we've talked about before, they'll move the leaves, they'll look up under the plants, and if you're patient and just stick at it, you'll fill your bucket up and get a lot of berries that the other people have missed. Yeah,
we're definitely still seeing a lot of really nice berries coming out of the patch.
But you usually can tell the difference, someone coming up to the stand, if it's an experienced strawberry picker. Yeah. You see the quality of the fruit, and you say, oh, yeah, you picked before.
Yeah, yep. Very good. Well, that's kind of a recap of where we are in the season. We probably have, a week and a half, 2 weeks?
Probably something like that. I'm kind of curious to see what this, 90-plus degree heat is going to do to the patch. One thing it does do, it really slows the pick-your-own traffic down in the afternoon, which I don't blame people. It's crazy hot.
Mornings tend to be
like this morning was busy, and then about lunchtime it really cleared out, which I would do the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. So why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about varieties? Maybe give us a rundown of some of the larger varieties, larger quantity of varieties. I'm saying all kinds of things wrong, but
that's okay.
Let's talk about the ones we grow.
You're running on low sleep. So
let's talk about the ones we grow, and maybe if there's some that are interesting to you,
okay.
We can talk about those too.
So, yeah, varieties. This year I believe we only have 4 varieties, at least of any consequence in our field. So varieties, I'm really a variety geek, I guess. This is the part of strawberry.
Yeah, it's fascinating
that I enjoy. I love tinkering with new varieties. I like reading the catalogs and the blogs and the papers about new varieties and so forth. Anyway, all that to be said, it's probably my weakness. And in years past, I've tried probably too many. We've had 7, 8, 9 different varieties and so forth. But
that's sort of how we have to figure out what works for us, because we're in a little bit of a different place than a lot of people are in Florida or California or
right.
North South Carolina, and it's just a different climate.
Yeah, so and even you look at the state of Virginia, we're not down east, Virginia Beach area. It's a warmer climate down there. They can grow some things that we can't here, or varieties do better down there than they do here. We're kind of in a transition area. Of course, we're not the cold mountains either, so we need to find what works here. All right, so we've rambled about varieties.
Yeah, so what do we actually grow?
Yeah, so in our pick your own patch, we grow primarily Chandlers. That's an old tried and true pick your own variety. It's very popular from North Carolina on up to probably up into Pennsylvania. And I don't know if it's much farther north than that. It's an older variety. I think it's I should have looked some of this stuff up. Maybe it came out in the 80s.
I don't know.
I think it's a California variety, but I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, it's kind of the gold standard pick your own strawberry. People have been looking for a replacement for Chandler because while it tastes great, it yields pretty well, it's a forgiving variety. It does have a few issues. One, it doesn't hold up the best in the rain. I would say it's not the worst in the rain, but it probably could do better. The plants tend to get, at least here in our part of the world, a little bigger than would be ideal.
They leaf out a lot more.
You're dealing with a large plant, and especially in wet years, that can trap a lot of moisture down under the leaves. You can deal with then fruit problems down under all that moisture. The other problem with Chandler, it has a very sharp peak that we talked about.
Right.
Peak.
It's not really a long, steady season necessarily.
It tends to peak, and if you have a field full of Chandlers and it's really warm, sometimes you can struggle to keep up.
Yep, we have done that before.
Yeah, so it's a great variety. Flavor's outstanding. People like it, but there are some issues with it, and so people have been trying to find a replacement for it for some time. So that's one variety we grow in the pick your own patch. That's almost all of what we grow. This year we did put another variety up in the pick your own patch. It's a variety that we've really come to like, called Albion. This is a California variety. It's a day neutral, meaning that it's not a June bearing variety.
Neither one of those terms mean much to me.
Yeah, well, okay, so it's more along the lines of an ever-bearing variety. In other words, it'll produce fruit over an extended period of time. A June-bearing variety produces fruit in not June, but
kind
around
of a short
May, shorter window. Yeah. In other words,
so would Chandler be a
June-bearing variety?
Okay.
Yeah, it's got a defined floral period, and then it fruits through those flowers, and then it's done.
Yeah.
Whereas the what I call a day neutral variety, it produces flowers kind of in waves, but somewhat steady, and it can, if the weather stays moderate, an Albion can
There's
produce,
still some flowers on Albions out there now.
Yeah, we've picked Albions into July.
Yeah.
And in a cooler place like up north farther or over in the mountains, you could pick Albions probably quite a while into the summer.
Interesting.
So anyway, that's called a day neutral variety. We like Albions. Flavor is extremely good, especially later into the season. The berry size is very nice. It's usually large.
They're twice
berry.
the size of a Chandler? I
Can
guess
be.
It varies a lot. But
especially early in the season, they tend to get big, and then they get a little smaller, just like everything else.
Sure.
Another interesting thing, the plant is smaller and it's a lot more open. They're easier to pick.
Yeah. It seems like there's not as many stems on them. Like you can look in the pick your own patch, and it's very obvious where the Albion rows end and the Chandler rows start.
Yeah, so that's just the nature of the plant. It's a more open plant. It's easier to pick, and that's one of the disadvantages of Chandler. One of the advantages, I would say, most times of Albions.
Yeah.
Doesn't protect maybe as well from sun.
Yeah.
Sun scald on the berries and so forth. So, okay, what are the weaknesses of Albion? It does not hold up well in rain. We said Chandler didn't, well, Albion's worse. Those big berries, it does not take much water to get everywhere the berry touches the plastic. You'll get rain damage, and so we increased the number of Albions we grow this year, but we knew that it was a little bit of a risk, and sure enough, we had a couple rain episodes. We threw a lot of fruit away. We had to clean them up, and it's just the nature of
Albions. I guess one good thing about the day neutral part of that is that they can go on produce more,
right,
and make up for it. I guess
so. And we do. We plan to pick them for a while yet. And that's one of the reasons we went to the effort of cleaning off the bad fruit, and so it wouldn't hurt the fruit which is to come. But and probably they don't yield on the level of Chandler. I mean, maybe if you picked one from April through July, you could get the same yield. Or even later than that, but so I've had people come in and they see the great big Albion berries maybe we picked in the wholesale patch, and say, well, why don't you put that all in your pick your own patch? Well, it just wouldn't work. We wouldn't get the production.
Things out.
It just, if we had a lot of rain, it would just be a disaster. And on our peak busy days, we couldn't keep up with demand.
We get already picked out very quickly.
We already have problems with growing on the Chandlers we do. So anyway, there's pros and cons to different varieties. So we've spoken about two of them: Chandler, Albion. Another variety that we are trialing this year is called Ruby June. We grew it 2 years ago, I believe. And the plants came from the nursery, fairly weak and small, so we didn't get very good yield at all that year off of them, and I didn't feel like I gave it a good test, so we grew it again this year. This is billed to be the Chandler replacement, Ruby June. I'm not convinced. It's okay. Pros. It's a great tasting berry. It's the taste is slightly different than Chandler, but it's right up there. I mean, it's a great tasting berry. I like to have a berry that I'm proud to sell, and I'm not worried about someone saying, that's kind of whatever. I like, we want to be defined by growing good fruit. So definitely a variety that I don't mind selling in my store.
Just a little side note, the flavor this year we are pretty sure is almost better than any other year we've grown them.
It's excellent.
It's just fascinating.
And that's across all varieties.
It's just fascinating how from year to year even the same variety can taste different. The environment and the way the season is going, I guess,
sunlight
plays a big part into that. Anyway, excuse my side note.
So Ruby June, great tasting berry. It's not going to yield with Chandler. I'm not sure if it's going to yield with Albion. Maybe.
When we're talking about yield, is there kind of an average guesstimate on like pound per plant kind of?
Yeah, that's a number you hear thrown out.
Yeah.
That's one that most people in our part of the world are shooting for. Some places, warmer climates. Other varieties, 2 and 3 pounds is not unheard of. I don't know if in a pick your own patch you would tend to ever get that kind of yield. If you have trained pickers picking, you're probably going to get a higher yield than if you're dealing with people who aren't trained.
Yeah.
So, Ruby June, it's a very interesting variety. I would like to grow more of it. Ours actually came from the nursery with some disease problems this year. If they can get that figured out and cleaned up, I would definitely be interested in growing more of them. One thing I didn't like about it, it had a really big plant again. Just as big as Chandler, maybe bigger.
I see.
And
This year it was more of a trial with the Ruby Junes, is that right? Like we planted a couple rows.
Yeah, we planted several thousand plants of them. Yeah, that's another key. If you're playing around with varieties, don't bet the farm on them.
Yeah,
just try a few rows, see how they do.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I can figure out a way to I can plant later in the fall and try for a smaller plant, but then I'm not going to get the yield.
Sure.
And so I'm not quite sure how to balance that with Ruby June. Anyway. We're still picking them. The other thing, they're early. They're a little earlier than Chandler.
Oh, interesting.
And probably about as early as Albion. But they're a little bit more similar to another variety we grow called Sweet Charlie.
Okay.
Now, Sweet Charlie.
I was going to ask about Sweet Charlie.
Yeah, they come in almost the same time, maybe just a tad later. And I thought they were done. The Ruby Junes I thought were done. But we're actually picking some very nice Ruby Junes right now. So they actually kind of had a lull, and now they're coming back a little bit. So we're getting some really pretty berries off of the Ruby Junes, and flavor is outstanding. So the fourth variety I mentioned, Sweet Charlie, we grow generally, a small percentage of those. Now this is an early berry. It comes in 7 to 10 days before Chandler. It's just something to kind of get
this is another fairly old variety.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I think it's a Florida variety.
Okay.
It's been around for quite a while. It used to would have been growing quite a lot in Florida. So it's one that, it has pros and cons. It tastes pretty good. A lot of people really, really like it. They say it's the sweetest berry you can get. I don't think it has quite the acidity, the tang that a good Chandler berry has, but it's a very good berry nonetheless. But like I say, it comes in 7 to 10 days early. That has pros and cons. I've had them. It tends to be a smaller plant. I've had issues with it coming through frost events. The smaller plant, row covers, it doesn't provide quite the protection that a bigger plant, canopy and row cover would. I think row covers tend to get squashed down onto the blooms and can cause damage even through row cover. Anyway, that's an aside. But if it's blooming earlier, you have more of a potential for problems with frost protection.
Sure.
We like to grow a percentage of these to just kind of get our pickers warmed up, get our markets kind of opened up. We can start selling them in the store. Gets kind of a buzz going. We
can start taking pictures of ripe red fruit.
Telling people it's coming. So it's a great berry for that. And we can even, there's enough volume, we can sometimes wholesale some of them. But we don't pick these very late into the season. I'd say this is a couple to 3 week long berry. It's not that they're non-existent, but they really taper off to the end. And so we actually just kind of treat this as a get us in the door variety, and then we actually usually
Are they kind of a smaller berry, or is that?
Yeah, they would tend to be a smaller berry.
Yeah.
I've seen some nice big ones, but it's more of a Chandler size berry. It's not a monster. So those are the 4 that we grew this year. They all have their place. They all have advantages and disadvantages. And it's just
interesting.
Together, I think they work pretty well.
Yeah. Did you plant any new trial varieties this year?
No, so I really backed off. Like I say, a few years ago, I don't know how many I did. I did a lot. I had, a row of this and a row of that. And I don't know, it gets kind of cumbersome. And so I backed off of that some.
In some ways, you need a larger sample size to really get a good feel for how they work for you, I guess.
Larger sample size, and it's good to actually trial them over a couple of years too,
sure,
because every year is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Some varieties we've grown in the past. Let me back up.
Sure.
There's a variety that's grown south of here quite a bit in a little milder climates called Camarosa. We've grown a few of these in the past. Grew a few last year. It's a good yielder. And
it's a pretty hardy berry. Is that what I'm remembering about Camarosa?
What do you mean hardy?
Like as far as sometimes when we do wholesale, they need to sit a little bit. Going from here to the customer.
Yeah, it would be a good berry to ship in a clamshell. It's a firmer berry. It would hold up good for that. I think it takes water better than a Chandler would. It yields, at least in a warm place. There's people down, like I said, in North Carolina getting 2 and 3 pounds.
Oh, wow.
They're picking Camarosas.
Yeah.
Flavor, you need it dead ripe. It turns almost a purplish red when totally ripe. That's when it has optimum flavor. Can be a little challenging in a pick your own patch if your customers don't know that. Mm-hmm. They can pick underripe berries that won't taste quite as good as they would. So anyway, we don't grow many of those. We've grown a few in the past, but it tends to be just a bit like a little bit warmer, I think, than what we have here.
Yeah.
But it's a very popular berry not too far away. A lot of them are grown. Some we've tried in the past. Just off the top of my head, we grew one year called Sweet Ann. The yield potential on these was amazing. The flavor was very good, but it was a very thin-skinned berry, huge berry, beautiful plants, but man, they did not hold up good in the rain.
Is that one? I almost think that's one that a friend of ours from down east talked about really liking. Maybe. I could be totally wrong.
I don't know. Maybe not. But I think there may be a few people growing it in the field, but almost everyone who's growing it now are growing it in like a high tunnel to protect it from the rain. It just does not do well in rain. There's a berry called Camino Real. We've grown some of those before, and I may grow some more of those again. It's an interesting berry. I can't get the flavor here to taste that great during the first part of the year. Mm-hmm. From mid-season on, it's pretty good. Great yielder, especially late in the season. I mean, it's just a steady, consistent, nice-sized berry. But, I don't know. We didn't plant any this year. It does well in the heat, like I said, late season. Oh, what are some others we tried?
I can't think of any, but
I can't. None are popping off the top of my head. I grew one last year called Archer. It comes from up north somewhere, some university. I got some bare root plants and trimmed them off and made my own little plugs, and it didn't yield very good at all. We've grown one called Flavor Fest. This is out of Maryland. It's especially grown. People like it north of here in the cooler places, maybe over the mountains. It would do pretty good. It doesn't like fertilizer or as much fertilizer as we generally feed our chandlers. So it needs to be. And sometimes it's hard to have a variety that doesn't like fertilizer or doesn't use the same.
Just the way we're set up, it's
right.
easier
You're treating your whole field
the
same. It's hard to exclude, certain things, certain rows. Mm-hmm. So it can be a little challenging growing different varieties in one field. But Flavor Fest was, if someone was a little farther north, I definitely would give that one a try. Great flavor, as you would imagine. And I'm quite interested. There are a couple new varieties, and then we can wrap this up. They're working on out of North Carolina. We actually were privileged to trial them last year, one of the 2 or 3 farms in the state of Virginia. So this is, I think it's NC State developing these varieties. One of them is called Rocco. I think that's its new name. I knew its number last year, but it's actually got a name now. That is billed as more of a Sweet Charlie replacement. We talked about, Sweet Charlie, it's the early berry.
Yeah.
And they were pretty early. Nice big berry, good flavor. My biggest problem with it last year, it had a very short window, couple weeks, and then
very similar to
sort of similar to a Sweet Charlie. I know in other places it did very well. It yielded very well down east. I have a friend in Virginia Beach, and he really liked it. So there again, varies to different things, different places, different years. I'm not saying I'd never grow that variety here. I was actually more interested in its counterpart, which I think, what is the name of that? Liz, I think, is going to be the new name. It was 038 last year, but I think Liz is its name. And they got some amazing yields out of some of the trials in other places.
Okay.
I thought,
did it do well here as well?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what the numbers were here. I can't remember.
Which last year was kind of an abnormal year.
Right, and we were calling for rain damage last year, so overall yield may have been better. I think the other thing is we weren't able to get them till probably later than we should have planted them. I think that may have hurt our yields some too. But this is one I would definitely like to grow next year, possibly grow a larger number of them. Great, nice big berry. They tasted great, I thought. Other places, some people didn't think they tasted that great, but man, here on our farm, I thought they were right up there. So
yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting. It's educational. You got to keep experimenting and tweaking. And
there's a number of universities that are kind of pioneering, exploring new varieties, I guess.
Yeah, and there's usually the Virginia Extension is working on maybe some trials. They grow some. I think they had some this year. North Carolina is big into this, and so I just keep my eyes on what people are talking about and see if I can learn something. And I don't know. Someday maybe we won't grow Chandler, but that won't be next year. We'll be planting a lot of Chandlers just like this year. Yeah. Probably Albions again. Might back off a little bit. I don't know. Anyway. This is the time of the year that we're thinking about varieties. Our strawberry season's winding down. We're thinking, okay, how did they do? What are some things we learned? And then the nursery folks start sending out their lists for coming fall.
Pretty soon we need to
start ordering in June and July, and the cycle repeats itself. So this is kind of a time when strawberry farmers are thinking about varieties anyway. And
varieties and vacations.
Maybe so.
Hopefully. Very good. I can't think of anything else that we should talk about. Is there anything that you're thinking that I'm not remembering?
No, I probably went plenty long on varieties, but anyway, like I say, it's kind of a fascinating thing.
For sure.
It's one of the parts of farming that I enjoy. I just enjoy experimenting and tinkering and kind of the
figuring out how.
Yeah, I think that's one of the
how
challenges,
to grow something well. Yeah,
the challenges that I like about farming. So there you go.
Very good. All right, folks, that wraps up episode number 4 of Conversations with Yoders Farm. Just a reminder that if you're enjoying this podcast, feel free to give us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you are listening to it for the first time, go ahead and subscribe, and we will, you'll get the next episode whenever it comes out, in 2 weeks, whenever. At least that's the schedule we're shooting for. You can also head over to
Unless I'm on vacation.
There you go. You can head over to Yoders Farm /podcast, and there's links there to subscribe in a lot of the main podcast applications. So, or you can listen to it there on the website. Plenty of ways to listen to the podcast. So that is it for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and we will catch you again in about 2 weeks. See ya.